This is the Dreadful Podcast from TV Podcast Industries. We're talking about Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 3, Wicked Old World.
We gotta get our piece of that American dream.
That isn't for us.
That's exactly for us. You take what you want, you make your way up, you use your brains, you use your nerve. No one's gonna give us anything, Rico, so we make them. First we make them look, then we make them scared. We are Pachuco. We are Chicano, we are Aztec, we are Spade, we are Wop, we are Dago, we are Chink, we are queer, we are everything they fear, and we go out dancing.
Easy now, mamita. You're gonna scare a baby boy.
She's right. What does a Chicano have? His skin.
Welcome back, fellow Penny Faithful. This is TV Podcast Industries. We're watching Penny Dreadful, City of Angels, Episode 3, Wicked Old World. I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Dreadfuls and the Penny Faithful. Welcome back. I am one of your other hosts, John.
And rounding out this group of Chicas, Chicanos, Gringos, and everything else that Rio danced and stated in this episode, I am Chris.
Well, we'll just say Irish people, really, aren't we? All Irish,
we're the pastiest of the pales.
We are, yes.
Really, like, it's almost translucent, if you will.
Pretty much.
Like, we open the fridge, and I have to close it very quickly in case I get a tan.
Just in case. It's very important to mind your skin when you're staying indoors, especially as an Irish person at the moment. But this week, want to say a very happy anniversary to our co-host, Chris. Happy first wedding anniversary, Chris. Happened this weekend.
It did.
Last year.
Did. I did the best I could do in Corona times. Mm-hmm. We did nothing. It was amazing. We actually had the perfect excuse to stay in and just do very little.
Excellent.
We went back to Peter Sellers, the original Pink Panther of 1963.
Good stuff.
Because why not?
Absolutely.
So we're now on to A Shot in the Dark. We also obviously watched Penny Dreadful and topped it off with a bit of old Lego creations and a round of golf on Everybody's Golf on the PS4.
Fantastic.
Because you need to do a bit of fun and games. And of course, my beautiful wife did a very indoors, strange but crazily quite fun scavenger hunt in my own home.
Fantastic.
Good stuff.
So that burned a few hours.
Excellent. Yeah, I'm very happy anniversary. That was a fantastic wedding that you both had last year. Both
Absolutely.
Myself and John really enjoyed it. So hopefully we'll get to actually celebrate in person in sometime in the future. I'm glad you had a good weekend though. We got to have a nice Zoom call with Kelly and Chris on Friday night, like everybody does when we're in lockdown, to have a bit of fun together. All got quite drunk on Zoom, which was always fun, isn't it?
Oh, definitely.
Except the hangover the next day. That was the painful part.
And just quickly, Chris, that means that Kelly really hid those presents well if it took you hours to find them in the scavenger hunt.
Over 15 clues with multiple words.
Excellent stuff.
It was a tough one, I'm not going to lie. Some of them were very... they were head scratchers.
Yeah.
I was kind of proud. Yeah.
And considering you spent almost 10 weeks in your house, that's really impressive that she's been able to find places that you wouldn't be able to find stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well done, Kelly, and congratulations to her on your first anniversary as well. Fellow Penny Faithful, if you haven't subscribed to the podcast yet, make sure you go over to tvpodcastindustries.com, subscribe to us over there for all of our thoughts on Penny Dreadful, City of Angels as we go through each of the episodes. Make sure you email us your thoughts as well. You can email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. We record these podcasts on Monday, so we'd love to hear from you as we go through each of our episodes throughout this season of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels.
Yeah, definitely. Great getting the feedback in from the community. It's really good to get your thoughts on these episodes.
Absolutely. Absolutely, yeah. It's been really fun hearing everybody else's thoughts on this show as it goes in. It's, you know, it's building up. We're 3 episodes into a 10-episode season, so there's been some interesting stuff happened so far, but lots more to come as the season goes on as well. And make sure also, we do need to say this up front, make sure you stay tuned throughout the podcast, because John will be doing his pub quiz as well for all of us towards the end of this episode. So
yes, the dreadful pub quiz.
Yes, exactly. Hopefully,
dreadful by name, dreadful by nature.
Exactly.
Hopefully, a pretty good pub quiz, and hopefully, we'll get some goodies for Petty Dreadful to send out to whoever gives us the most correct answers in that pub quiz.
Yes, a pint of blood, maybe, or a skull, or something like that. Something weird and wonderful,
suit, if you will.
A zoot suit, maybe. They're very expensive, Chris. They're very expensive.
They're not a zoot suit.
we could get one of the tattoos, like the tattoo that was put onto Mateo's hand. Or maybe a transfer would be better.
Maybe a transfer of that. Yes, exactly.
We wrap it up in a packet of cereal, like we used to get.
Did we used to get tattoos and cereal? I remember chewing gum.
Got transfers.
Really? Excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, let's get into this episode of Petty Dreadful. City of Angels, episode 3, Wicked Old World, was directed by Sergio Mimica-Gezzan, a director of many TV shows over the years, including Fallen Skies and Battlestar Galactica. But before that, he was a first assistant director for Steven Spielberg on loads of his films, including Saving Private Ryan, Schindler's List, and Minority Report. Cool experience to come from movies like that and do many TV shows that we've loved as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That must have been why the Nazi scene seemed so good with her Goss and Gestapo Kurt.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, that's actually very true. Yeah, good catch there, John. Episode was written, of course, by John Logan. Once again, the showrunner for the show. I'm not going to have to mention that very often, am I? I know there's some other episodes written by other people, but I'm not going to have to mention that he's the showrunner. Everybody knows that by now, right?
We hope.
We hope so. John, do you want to tell us the summary for this episode of Penny Dreadful, City of Angels?
Sure. Tiago and Molly visit Santa Monica Pier in an effort to escape their complicated lives. Livid at the murder of his friends, Detective Lewis Michner interrogates Brian Koenig, a young Caltech student. Meanwhile, Councillor Townsend and Alex's political agenda is jeopardized when Councilwoman Beverly Beck vows to fight them all the way. Elsewhere, Dr. Peter Craft discovers a dark truth when he visits Elsa at home. Mateo visits the Crimson Cat dance hall and is invited into a seductive, dangerous new world.
That new world is so seductive that I want to be involved in it. I totally want to go down to the Crimson Cat and go for a dance. That looked amazing.
It looks cool, doesn't it, actually? Yeah, definitely. You can imagine, that is the sort of big club of that era. Or it's even, it's kind of what rave was to the 80s.
Or 90s.
No, but like that, the start of rave in the 80s with like the Hacienda, where it's kind of like, it's really on the edge of society.
Sure.
In this case, this kind of music and the inhibition, I'd much prefer to be at the Crimson Cat than in that stuffy restaurant that her Goss and Townsend were.
Yeah, true.
Although Chateaubriand is always quite nice.
a nice glass of wine with your dinner, definitely. Will we get into our big moments for this episode, guys? Ready to go? John, do you want to kick us off first with your big moment from the episode you want to talk about?
Yeah, I suppose it is Michner at the morgue. Nathan Lane here really just blew my mind. I've always liked his comedy stuff, like in Modern Family, like in Birdcage, and I know that he's done more serious stuff on Broadway, but alas, I haven't been able to see that quite so much. And here, I think that success that he's had on Broadway, bringing it to the TV screen, I just thought he was so good in capturing that emotion of grieving for both Anton and Sam, who were shot by Gestapo Kurt in the previous episode, and following up on his friends, that a great kind of world weariness about him, both in terms of just trying to persuade the doctor in the morgue to just like hold back on his report, as he kind of goes off track to investigate his friend's disappearance and murder effectively. Off the books, in that sense, not really as part of the LAPD.
You're totally right though. That moment with Nathan Lane where he's in the stairwell after taking the bullets and just breaks down and speaking Hebrew about the loss of his compatriots, his friends, is really, really just such a powerful moment right at the opening of the episode after seeing the burnt bodies of them from the car. It's just a really good moment to start off the episode.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I think as well, it's also probably the fact that he knows who it is and he knows he can't just bring them to justice in that way. Yeah. Because I suspect maybe they have diplomatic immunity with Herr Goss and Gestapo Kurt being part of the German embassy there in LA, or so the thing is, this is the thing that really must be tearing him up, and I think Nathan Lane caught that so well, and the world weariness, as he kidnaps and threatens the young kid from Caltech, Brian Koenig, he basically threatening him that he's going to chuck him down into the deep ravine where the coyotes will get to him. And Brian Koenig is, well, that would be the best thing that's happened to me this week. And it kind of is reflected back by Michner here. And that world weariness where, he just talks about, having a bad week as well for a Jew, that's saying something, really capturing that, time period as well where, Jewish people were very much being threatened just as much as the Chicanos and the black communities in America as well as in Europe. So I think, I thought that was really good.
Absolutely. And it answers the question that we had last week when we saw the camera just focusing on Brian Koenig inside Caltech. Where we just didn't know what his reaction was after coming back from his meeting with the Germans. Here he tells us that, he'd rather die than work with them, kind of thing. So, but they have some pressure on him. They have something that they're forcing him to work on. So it's a very short scene with him, but at least we got that answer that he's not willingly doing what he's doing or whatever it is that he's doing.
Do you feel it was cut too short? Literally right the ending of that scene. I just feel there was like an extra 60 seconds of dialogue that should have been included, that because the next time we see Michner, he's in the pub with Tiago. I know who Werner von Braun is.
Yes, Werner von Braun, yeah.
But I'm curious, like, not a lot of people would. I'm literally a nerd, so I know about rockets and space and things like that. And I also know his relationship to World War II, Nazis, and then the US because of Operation Paperclip and things like that.
And this is what we should really say it, because as you say, not everybody's going to know who Werner von Braun is. So we should really obviously say it, because I think they did that for tension is the reason why you don't get another 10 seconds or 15 seconds or 60 seconds of that discussion between the two of them. They want that held over until next week so that we do find out what Koenig's doing. But if you do know who Werner von Braun is, that scene has a lot of meaning to it, doesn't it?
I think so. I think I'm slightly with Chris here in the sense that I was expecting there to be kind of a reflection scene a bit later on in the episode where maybe he is talking with Brian Koenig about that, or relaying it to someone, but that's difficult for him because of the position he's in that this is totally off the LAPD books. He shouldn't be doing what he's doing to Brian.
That's right.
And it's being held over to the next episode. I think they've done this already. I think with the the scene in the last episode with Fly Rico, and you kind of thought we were going to see Mateo going to Crimson Cat, I suppose, then, and a bit more delving into that world, but they held it over to this episode. So they seem to be doing a lot of that where they're holding things off rather than maybe being quite as immersive around that aspect of this episode. So yeah, I suspect we'll see something in the next few episodes. I mean, to the point, I suspect Brian hasn't been killed by Michner because he leaves him with, "Will educate me."
Yeah.
And he does seem to kind of maybe pull back from his interrogation and his violence, because, I mean, oh my goodness, did I feel like his teeth got smashed with the boot? I felt that the sound there was of some kind of crunch. It was almost as bad as the American History X with the curb stomp. It really made me cringe. So I'm just kind of wondering, has Brian told him everything, and yet maybe Lewis has just thrown him into that ravine anyway? I doubt it, but I just wonder whether he has. But he says to Lewis, he says, do you know what's going on in Germany at the moment? And again, another great world weariness aspect. You know, it's like, are you kidding? I think he's playing it really well, is Nathan Lane here. And Brian talks about the work of Dr. Werner von Braun. And as you say, Chris, the rocket technology for the V1, V2 rockets, sort of developed by him, and using Jewish labor, forced Jewish labor in effectively a concentration camp that made these rockets. I like your phrase from Nazi to NASA, because effectively, he helped develop NASA's rocket technology, and what was it? Set up the rocket schools, or
he was effectively forgiven for his part in the war and brought to America so that they could complete their space race, which was massively important to them. I think he was brought over in about 1957. It was about 15 years after the war that he was brought over to the US.
That was when he was officially. He
exactly.
came across as part of Operation Paperclip, where the U.S. Army and their intelligence services took a number of rocket scientists and scientists secretly through Europe to the U.S. Under fake aliases and things like that. He'd actually later go on to be in Disney, a Disney movie.
Yes,
with about the potential of man and space. And so bringing it back to Penny Dreadful, I think it's a brilliant thing to, again, grounding it very much in alt history at this point, potentially alt history, depending on where they go with a lot of this. They may bring this on back further later. Like you said, next episode, they may do a kind of more of an explanation. I just feel, in order to land that scene with further gravitas, because I'm not taking away Nathan Lane's performance, the sound of the teeth, everything was fantastic. I just feel they should have drove the point home by going, do you know who Werner von Braun is? Educate me. Do you know what a rocket is? That exactly. Though literally that then elevates the stakes a bit further in the plot line. Because, again, I know we're 3 into 10, so we've still got 7 episodes. It's just because after this, the next time we see Michner, the world weariness is setting in further, but we don't know why. And I feel that's the missing link. Because even the final scene with Michner, where he's in his detective room, his bedroom, even if they had a new news clipping or something being placed, just to give it that more, I use gravitas a lot when we're talking about this particular show, because I think that's one of the things I think is missing in some of it. And I'll kind of talk about more when I get to my piece. But I just feel it was amazing. And I can't enough. Like, just that scene, as you said, when he comes out of the morgue was just so beautiful.
So good.
Absolutely. I think for me, the world weariness is more that he's almost like a New York cop, but in LA in that sense. And also then his Jewish heritage and the time in which he's living, then it's hearing, his colleagues talking about Mexicans and so on, and probably missing him out, but knowing that behind him they may speak as derogatory about the Jews as they do about Mexicans. To me, that's where he's coming from. It's not necessarily what he's going through. He already was in that world on episode 1, and it's the contradictions and I suppose that snidiness of the world that he's living in. But for him, it's more than snidiness. It's being anti-Jewish, effectively.
It's the discrimination that he's feeling.
And I think, I think for me as well, originally I thought with Brian Koenig, I thought this would be something to do with nuclear physics. I thought it was going to be around that as opposed to the rocket physics and rocket technology. I thought it was, until they mentioned about Werner von Braun, I thought it was going to be about, like the Germans tried to develop heavy water in Norway. I think the film Heroes of Telemark is the kind of plan to blow that up. Okay. So I thought it was going to be about the nuclear race, kind of fitting in to the idea of Magda saying to Santa Muerta at the start, when she sets alight to the crops, I'll make this world burn. And I was kind of thinking with Brian Koenig that the heat of a nuclear explosion and that development of that, of nuclear weapons from the physics labs, but it's rocket technology, so it still could be linked in with that to fire off a nuclear rocket, I suppose. But yeah, it's interesting to see how that goes. I think related to this is the meeting with her Goss and Townsend. They have this huge confrontation where Townsend's trying to assert his authority. Don't forget who's running this show. And her Goss in just the put down, he's talking about he's a body full of guts that he's just using. He's simian, he's a monkey, and don't you forget, let me just be clear here. You're thinking about becoming mayor. I speak for Adolf Hitler and for the next 1,000 years. Either you're by our side or under our boot. I think
such a
great line, which probably only a Nazi could say with such kind of authority. Absolutely. But it really lends itself to that.
Did he, just one other thing, did he miss what Councilman Townsend was saying to him? Is that why he goes down the route of the simian, his simian plans? Because what he says to him is, he says, why don't you use your flying monkey about Kurt? And flying monkeys are well known as the Wizard of Oz, the Wicked Witch of the West. Her minions are called the flying monkeys. And I'm wondering whether Goss just thought he didn't understand the monkey plan, and that's why he keeps calling him a simian from then on, because he maybe hasn't seen Wizard of Oz. He's probably not in Hollywood to see movies.
Yeah, maybe. I think, it could be. I suppose even for Goss, it's you can sense they want to be under the radar, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
He talks about the audacity of the bloody shirt and the Memorial Highway, and even with then asking them to effectively kill Councilwoman Beck. And it's all too much focus on him, and this is not what her Goss wants. The company he's running is called Via Formosa. It's Spanish. For beautiful road, and it's all kind of undercover. That's not to say he wouldn't kill her but only if need be, not to draw unwanted attention. Which it kind of connects nicely as well with the fact that Alex gives him that warning because of the splash that he's made with all the headlines around that bloody shirt and the wife or the bereaved widow now coming in to that press conference. And she says, you've got to be careful because you're now in the public eye. You've got to really mind yourself. And of course, we don't realize what that fully means. It's not just simply in terms of these meetings probably with Goss and Kurt, but it is also the fact that we do see Townsend heading for a bit of cottaging in somewhere in the parks of LA.
Yeah.
And you know,
John had to tell me what that term meant earlier on today. I had no memory of the term. I never heard it mentioned that way.
Well, originally it was I kind of said dogging, but that is public displays of affection. It's almost like being an extrovert, and whereas at the time it was illegal for so cottaging is more gay sex in public toilets or around public toilets. Yeah.
So cottaging is George Michael in the mid-90s, and
exactly,
and dogging is George Michael after Let's Go Outside.
Probably, yeah. Okay. So that yes. Fellow Penny faithful, your quick guide to sexual activities outside.
But Alex knows as well. She knows that that's the activities that she's warning him away from, right? She's not actually warning him away from eating too many potatoes with dinner when she says you need to calm down your activities. You might need to not give them any ammunition. She looks at him over her glasses, kind of going, I know exactly what you will do, and you're not allowed to do it now because the press will be all over you if you do, right?
Absolutely.
I thought that was just so funny because, sorry, not funny, haha, just where they were going with that, I was not expecting.
Right.
Like, you need to be good, her piece there, I was like, okay, what's it? Alcohol? Oh, no, drugs. They're going to go down the drugs route.
Right.
Okay, that's cool. That could be interesting. Mm-hmm. Like him being the alcoholic or the drug taker or something like that. And now they're going for a completely different way. I was not expecting what that. Up until the point where he was like, went around the back. I'm like, okay, it's a drug deal, maybe.
Right.
He's gone to get some, he's gone to get some cocaine or marijuana or like, who knows? He's
the
a big
pretty
stoner.
Boys were a giveaway.
Yeah,
they were, but I was like, yeah, I was just, even the roles of that was interesting. It was a reversal on what I was expecting.
Okay.
I was expecting him to be potentially the
recipient,
and he's the, I don't know what the best way, it's been used before where it's like, he doesn't think he is gay because he's receiving, blah, blah, blah. No. Well, he has to fight it, blah, blah, blah. Again, sorry, that sounds very terrible, but I just thought that's where they were going with it. And then it was just, again, a complete shock on that. I was like, okay, this is a complete veer away from what I was expecting.
This would be quite likely, wouldn't it? In a situation where he's a very powerful man in the city, it's a power play to not be the one in control, I suppose, if you want to say it that way, trying to mind our P's and Q's as Alex has told us to. But that's basically, it would be something that would be quite likely with a character like that who's going through these whole things of being at a high level in office and, butting up against the minions of Hitler, as they even call themselves, and kind of being a bit powerless. So going out and doing what he's doing is probably quite a big play for him to do. But it does explain one of the things we discussed back in episode 1 as to why this particular persona of Natalie Dormer's Magda, the character of Alex, doesn't use a beautiful visage in front of him, because it's not necessary. It's not something that he would need, I suppose, is kind of the way that she has chosen this. We thought it might be because he's a philanderer, maybe, or something like that. I think you were talking about that, Chris. Whereas it actually looks like, well, a beautiful woman wouldn't be the way to get into his heart. The way to get into his mind and get whispering in his ear is to be a strong woman who can guide him in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so. I think the other thing as well is that it's very much like Gods and Monsters ilk in Hollywood on Netflix at the moment. And while still illegal, I think as well there is a forging of, I suppose, a different way of doing this undercover. I mean, certainly within Hollywood, the Netflix show, you've got the gas station and the keyword saying "Take me to Dreamland." Mm-hmm. So all this kind of stuff. And I think
it's all going on a lot at the time. And again, it's another callback to the original Penny Dreadful. There was a lot of things going on behind the scenes of Victorian England that were shown above the surface of Penny Dreadful, the original. And what we're seeing here in this version of Penny Dreadful is similar things are happening. People may think everybody's an upstanding citizen, but just below the surface, there's loads of things going on they wouldn't want you to know that are being hidden from the press, so the public don't get to know them.
Yeah, and that aren't necessarily enforced. And I think to your point as well, Chris, I think Townsend is weak, and so I'm not sure I think him kneeling for his I suppose his gay romance at the public toilets. Maybe he doesn't feel dominant. If you think Alex is strong, her Goss is strong, he tries to project that, but ultimately he, I think it's symbolic. I'm not saying that. It's a symbolic sort of look at Townsend here, and in the sense he feels challenged by Councilwoman Beck, and so immediately thinks about assassinating her, which even the Nazis go,
Might be a bit
and she calls him out as well immediately as a piss pot fascist, that she has taken many down before and she'll take him down. So I think generally he is an insecure guy who's dangerous because he will lash out like he does with trying to get Councilwoman Beck killed. And I think sort of the frustration then of Alex and turning into Magda, coming out of that hotel or restaurant where they've had the meal with Gestapo Kurt and her Goss, then it speaks to her frustration. I think the one thing I want to know is Magda lethal? Will she kill these guys that he's gone to meet at the end of the episode to kill them so that he doesn't blow open and expose himself to that intense scrutiny about being a gay man in a time where it's illegal? Will she do that? Because that's the one thing I'm still not sure, or is just the violence and the war, that's what she's leading to, but will she act violently to make sure that happens? So I'm half expecting we either have a lot of dead gay men in future episodes, potentially, that Townsend has come in contact with,
right? Or
one of those men will effectively identify him because of his higher profile, and so he's in a precarious position, I suppose, is what I'm saying, let alone the fact that he's meeting Nazis, which should be the thing that makes it precarious.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a fascinating idea there, that you have Alex kind of losing her control and turning back into Magda. I thought the scene was fantastic, just as she walks behind the car, and then as she walks back out, every piece of glass around her is just exploding. I think it's really cool, but I absolutely have the same question as you, John. Does this lead to Magda now taking action against some other people to protect this really powerful asset that she has in her battle to get to this war started, I suppose? So it's intriguing to see.
So speaking of a war, Derek, do you want to take us on to your points?
Okay.
Because I think there's a couple of overlaps here between the themes we've discussed, and especially ending on the potential war. Yeah,
absolutely. My big point for the episode is Mateo and the Pachucos. I think these scenes in this episode are fantastic. I've really wanted to see this happen, because we saw Fly Rico last episode, and he did come across really cool. And the episode opens here with Mateo telling his older brother about how cool this guy, the Pachuco, was. He arrives in with this, what does he say, 2-foot long switchblade, and the cops went running the minute he opened it up. You can tell this admiration coming from Mateo, and how excited he is that he's eventually going to get down to the Pachuco club and see them all. And I have to say, this is so well put together. The set design, the dancing that's going on. It's just, it is a new world. It's something that I've not seen before. I've not been in a club like that. That's a good example that you've given, John, of rave clubs. Your first time going to one in the 80s or 90s, that moment when you walk in the door and see this brand new world opened up to you, which is exactly what Mateo's experienced. And I think how the two of them connect across the dance floor, it's a massively, wonderfully choreographed scene as well. I'm not sure it's as well choreographed in real life, of course, but it really does show off what this whole movement is. It's all about this, as you say, uninhibited dancing of everybody in the room. And as everybody kind of parts and reveals, Fly Rico coming in and just owning that stage in front of everybody and then bringing Mateo into their world, literally. You see their eyes meet across the room. There's either some kind of sexual tension between the two of them, or Mateo is just going, I want to be that guy.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
who I want to be. Like, I love the little touch, it's a tiny little costume touch, but I noticed it the second time I watched the episode. Did you notice this, that Mateo's actually dressed up looking like his older brother, Tiago? Going in on his big night out, he's wearing a crappy beige jacket over a light blue shirt, and his hair is all slicked back, exactly like Tiago's uniform that he saw him wear the day before. And it's like, I'm just like my older brother. I get to go out and experience society.
Yeah, exactly.
And the minute he gets there and has the conversation with Fly Rico, he looks at him and goes, you need to sort out that hair, man. You know?
Yeah, it was exactly the same jacket. That I noticed it because I went, isn't that what Tiago was wearing when he walked to talk to his mama?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, it's like they had one good jacket. That like, you had one, like the mum probably bought like 3 of them for the 3 brothers. It was the same jacket, different sizes, or same jacket, and it passed down multiple times.
Yeah,
Makes a lot of
absolutely.
sense, yeah. I just love the idea of him putting on the costume of his older brother to go out in his first real time out in the world. But remember,
Because his older brother is cool, and therefore, if I go out like him, I'll be cool. Except, he ain't. But certainly when you compare, well, he's very cool. He's certainly got the dance moves, but like when you compare what all the other people are wearing, like the different colors, is a lot more open for the chests and so on. Or you've got the women in their pants as well, and the
suspenders.
It's really really cool. Yeah. I really enjoyed Rico coming onto the dance floor and effectively soaking everyone in sweat, I presume, or hair oil, and I just thought that was like, he didn't give a crap about that. He was flinging it everywhere, and I thought, that's what I'm probably going to look like after the lockdown with my hair being so long. It'll just like, I'll wash it and I can sort of do that whole shake thing like sort of a pooch. But I thought that was just really good. And I think, it was just so vibrant and cool. I really, really loved it.
It was, the choreography was done by Tommy Tong, who's an Irish choreographer. He did the original series of Penny Dreadful. We watched every episode of that, as we've mentioned before, and one of the biggest moments that happened in that series had a massive 1800s ball, effectively, and they talked about everybody going to balls all the way throughout the series, and then did one big one where there were a load of dancers dancing in period dance, effectively, all choreographed by Tommy Tong. So to have him brought over to America to do this choreography for this massive Pachuco moment, this moment when you're getting revealed or the culture is being revealed for you, it was just a really cool touch, I think. He did say that he modernized some of the dancing and mixed in some Cuban dancing and some other types of Spanish dancing, into what would be traditional Pachuco dancing, so that it would feel like a place that everybody would want to go for a dance, basically. Everybody watching. Definitely. It. And there's just such a great freeing moment. I love dance. It's one of the things I love watching, really, as well as if I ever get out to a bar again, I will dance, I promise. But I love that moment when Rio is introduced, this other version of Natalie Dormer is introduced to Mateo, and the first thing she wants to do is to see whether she can trust this guy, is to get him on the dance floor and see his moves. Also, I suppose you got to think about it. Mateo does work in the record store, so he's probably been around music quite a lot. He's got these moves because he's probably quite into that whole scene. So I thought it was quite a useful introduction between the two characters, and it was just wonderful. I really loved that whole sequence. It was so good to watch.
Okay, so for me, this felt slightly High School Musical.
Okay.
Like, it took me left
Christopher.
I know, I'm sorry. It took me so left of field. I was not expecting a musical dance number.
Why?
Literally, if Fly Rico had jumped up on the stage beside the band, and grabbed the guitar and did a kind of jaunt across. Or I understand why they're trying to introduce you to the Pachucos, and I get that, the zoot suits and thing. It just felt so long. And I think that was because you had the Fly Rico scene, and then you had the Rio scene. And you literally had these two right beside it. And it felt so out of place to me is because it was so choreographed. And I don't mean this in a bad way. And like, I did it was good. It just literally felt like something out of Disney because everyone, and the reason I say this is just because everyone started dancing like very similar styles and like literally in beat and in time and everything like that.
Like doing the Macarena or raving. Like, you do it in time, and it's not all the same.
Yes, you do it in time, but it's all the same. They were all dancing literally the same dance.
But it is more formal as well, remember?
I suppose.
Like, if you think of dance, it would have come... So if you're thinking of the Penny Dreadful Blood Bowl, which is very formal, where people have certain moves, and certain Latino dance as well, and even the tango, which is very central, I mean, you know, was too much for sort of stiff white Europeans, but there's still a movement to it, and so I think, you know, even jive and all that kind of stuff. It's and that's how it distinguishes you, in the same way as you didn't have that for punk, because that was the whole point. That it distinguished them from that. So I think the fact that they were all doing it the same, like if you see the waltz on New Year's Eve in Austria, it's like saying, oh, but they're doing all the same, because that's the whole kind of thing of the music. But it's slightly freer, and people are doing different things. So, like, you had the three ladies in their waistcoats just kind of kicking out their legs, whereas then other people being flung over. So... And in different ways, some rolling across the back and others doing it from the shoulder.
Oh, I love that move where the lady's spinning 6 times with a hand over her head as she's spinning, and some cool stuff. I think some really good examples of this, I suppose, are you know, Saturday Night Fever with from the 70s with John Travolta, where the whole scene is everybody is practicing at home all week for that Saturday night where they go out. This isn't just they go out and they hear a song and they go and dance to it. This is everybody has been getting themselves all geared up to go out and show off their new moves to that group of people. And maybe they might be able to be as good as Fly Rico, who owns this bar, basically, or Rio, who clearly is, the two of them are the ones that are the best dancers in the club and lead this group of Pachucos, effectively. But it doesn't end there. It's not just the dance scene. It does all get interrupted when Officer Riley once again rears his horrible, ugly head into the club to ruin their night. Bringing
the Irish heritage down every episode so far.
And using my least favorite American phrase, the paddy wagon, which is so, I hate that phrase. It's something that always annoys me. It's the wagon that the police used to use to carry Irish people who were drunken, and has now become synonymous with where they take people that they want to arrest. But he brings in this idea that they've put the Pachucos, or all Mexicans, under some form of lockdown, under some form of curfew. And I'm not too sure whether he's even telling the truth there. He goes, as of about 10 minutes ago, the lockdown has happened. Have you not heard? You're off down to the station, basically. And I'm not sure whether that's even real, because he says it's 10 minutes ago. So would they really dispatch police that quickly, or do they just want to shut down the club because the kids are having fun?
Yeah.
I'd say that this is going to be a plot point of the next one, because it's backlash for the end of episode 1. So any Latino is not allowed out after curfew, and the curfew set as X a time. And I'd say that's probably what we're going to see, that this additional, it's going to be the Pachucos and Mateo versus this curfew, this lockdown against them, against the Mexicanis, the Chicas, the Latinas, the Latinos, everything Rio says, because she goes through a laundry list of who they are.
Everybody who wants America to be straight, white, Christian, effectively.
That's the WASPs, effectively.
Exactly. But did you notice in the ensuing fight, I suppose, between the two sides here, it is Rio that throws the first punch. So I thought a nice little touch, because we've seen Magda whisper in everybody's ears. We've seen both Alex and Elsa just manipulate people by talking to them. And here we have Rio actually throwing the first punch that starts the riot in the room. I thought that was that's a different character, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And then laughs her way out the door as she brings Mateo and Fly Rico with her outside. So.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's followed up very quickly by Rico, so they can kind of make their escape. I think the interesting thing with Officer Riley, and I have no idea whether it's just my kind of working theory on it, is that in the same way that traditionally the cars are known as paddy wagons because it was always associated that it was the Irish gangland sort of in Chicago, whatever, being put into them. There's that famous black and white picture. That idea that first generation Irish moving to America were treated in the same way that now the Pachucos are. And it's this almost, is it some kind of deflection? So it's like, well, they're no longer at us. And we've gradually made our ways into that kind of middle class area of the police, law, and fire. And, Tiago is this first generation where he has made it into the police, but it's almost like a deflection. So that's why there's this beat down. I mean, I don't really know about the psychology of this, but it's something is that why he's doing it?
It's the argument that we fought our way to get all of these rights, and if somebody else gets those rights, then we somehow lose ours. That's the kind of argument that would have come from second generation Irish immigrants. Our parents fought for our rights to be here, and nobody else is taking those away from us. It's kind of the attitude, yeah. But that does lead to, we played the clip at the start of Rio's kind of pushing towards this idea of the Pachucos standing up for their rights and getting the American dream, moving together as a group to fight the system and take back Mexico. As she points out, 90 years before, this particular location was part of Mexico. Now it's part of LA and part of the United States of America, effectively. So this is her idea, that she's working with the Pachucos, working with Fly Rico to try and incite them to take up arms against the establishment, effectively. So that's the other side of this. And now she's got one of the Vegas involved. So this is the first one of the Vegas, other than that quick moment in the era of Raul that kicked off the battle around the bridge and got a couple of police officers killed and a number of Mexicans killed. This is another member of the Vega family that she's possibly got the ability to talk to and convinced to work on her side. Yeah,
I mean, I think Mateo and her have got the same ideas. I mean, he's totally it's Rico here that's almost trying to dissuade her. How can you do what you're saying we should do? And it's interesting going back to the starters with Mateo and Raul, just because Mateo talks about slitting his own brother's throat at one point, and is tempered by Raul saying he's not one of us. He's not one of them either. I wouldn't want to be in Tiago's shoes. He's kind of in no man's land. And Mateo is absolutely aligned here. This call to arms that Rio is doing, that he wants to be a part of that. And it's almost Fly Rico, because potentially he has something to lose because of how he's worked his way up, who's trying to just temper what they do. It's not to say that he won't do it, but he's a little bit more kind of like chill the jets, people. Let's take this one step at a time.
Yeah, absolutely.
So moving on from the High School Musical, no, jokes aside, it was a good scene. It just felt out of place to me. It's fine.
We're going to have to completely disagree, Chris.
Exactly. So moving on, this part of it really started getting interesting to me, because what you do have here then is the youth movement. And it's this kind of, I was always trying to figure out where how they were going to do the whole this whole other element to it, of the brother versus brother, nation versus nation, race versus race. I was always trying to figure out the race part, because I was like, with the zombie being back, we have to talk about that later.
Raul,
one of us
zombie.
do.
Okay.
The zombie.
Definitely.
The freeway bulldozing wasn't going to cause as much of a race versus race issue. This probably does, because you had the more tempered grandparents probably stopping a lot of this, whereas the temperamental Pachucos, that's where you can really inflame the race, and it's them versus the police.
Yeah, because it's a community all of their own age group of people just like them, and Rio's stuck herself right in the center of it, effectively.
Yeah.
Now, I do know from history the Zoot Suit riots are kind of a famous moment when kids who wore zoot suits, the Pachucos, did get attacked and did attack back, and there were massive riots that happened in LA at the time. That happened about 1942, 1943. So I think that's a couple of years. So if this show goes on for 4 or 5 seasons, we may get to the Zoot Suit riots, or there may be a time jump at some point in one of the seasons to catch up to the war and catch up to the Zoot Suit kids. But what I thought was interesting about that, part of the reason it happened was that specifically laws were made to outlaw them making those suits after wartime, because the cost that's involved in the actual making of those, of the uniforms that they wear, the zoot suits that they wear, was considered to be wasteful when everybody else was tightening their belts across America. But it was specifically seen by Mexicans as being a targeted law against Mexican culture.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
I thought that was fascinating. That's what was the kickoff for the Zoot Suit riots.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, I just saw it as race versus race. I think the difference here is it's different expressions of that. Mateo is from the younger generation. He's coming at it almost from his cultural side of things around his skin. So and so is Raul, but he's doing it with organized labor. It's that different. It's the different approaches, because like Raul makes that point. He says, "Where were the Pachucos when we were stood facing down the cops?" And even Rico is like saying, work is for saps. And one of the Pachuco's fathers went to help out there and got bullets in his ass. It's a different generational expression of what they're feeling. And I think in the same way for Mateo, it's his individual culture. Raul, it's the destruction or the division of the community. And that's the expression. It's the expression of the racism towards the Mexicans and how they're taking it up. And for Raul, he's that guy at the cannery. He organizes the workers. He's coming at it from that. Yeah. It's the community, it's the jobs and so on. Mateo is young. He's got a completely different perspective on life. He's third generation, and he wants the modern thing. Yeah. That conversation between him and Raul on the bed, you see that Raul, that's just not for him. Mm-hmm. It would be like my gran going to the rave back in the early 90s or, when I was. It's the same way that, in 80s Britain, people striked. Now they write a TripAdvisor review or something like that. The idea of what you need to do to bring about change. And I think both of them are fairly hands-on active. Yeah. But it's a different reason for it. Right. I think in some respects, or a younger twist. It's generational. Yeah. But I love this thing with Rio, bringing Mateo, into this. And absolutely. I think the tension actually will be with Tiago more. Like, I think we're all there thinking that Raul would have the big tension with Tiago. It could be Mateo ultimately. Because Raul actually tried to say, well, don't slit your brother's throat.
Yeah. That's your brother. You respect him.
Respect him, but also, go out with love and fondness.
Yeah. let me ask you guys this: as an ending to that Pachucos scenario, how did you feel? Like, I'm happy with the introduction of Rio. I think it's going to be interesting where it leads.
Yeah.
I think when I talked about this alt timeline, potentially they may bring the Zoot Suit riots up early.
Maybe
they may or they'll do their version of an early one or a smaller one.
Yeah.
Like mini breakouts, mini riots, like a riot, if you will.
Yeah, perhaps. And one other question that I had about it from that as well is, I know Magda is all of these women.
Yeah.
But does that mean she knew Mateo before he arrived there in some way, because she'd already seen him at the riots when she was in her Magda persona? Has she earmarked him as being possibly a better incendiary device, I suppose, than Fly Rico is or was when she was using him? You know, it's a couple of those weird questions that we just don't know because we don't see inside the head of Magda inside all of these other characters. You know, we don't have a moment where she comes back to her, wherever she goes back to her plane of existence and goes, okay, well, today I did this as Alex, and I did this as Rio, and I did this as somebody else, and this is as another one of the characters. You know, we don't get that kind of wrap up at the end of the day. So there's just a moment where she's talking to both of the guys, to Fly Rico and Mateo, where she seems to be pushing the agenda a bit more with Mateo than with Fly Rico, as if she's kind of found her new device almost.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued to see how that might play out in the future as well. But I love the whole scene. I think this whole section was definitely my big moment for the episode. Chris, one more big moment to talk about. Do you want to take us on to your big moment?
Sure, let's talk about Zombie Bro. No, I'm only joking. I'm gonna speak for 10 minutes just about the Zombie Brother. No. I want to talk about A Day Out at the Pier. I can't do my Popeye. Sailor Man. That was terrible. My God. Anywho, A Day Out at the Pier. This was really fun. This was good because it kind of did move the Tiago and Molly storylines further on.
Okay.
For me. So, we were questioning, okay, is Molly good? Is it an act? Things like that. I'm going to jump around the over. I'm not going to talk about it in the actual succession of the story, but we do learn that she actually probably is good. Whereas it seems to be creepy ass mother. Who, hold on, just like, also, I just want to point to, like, walk into a dark room, light goes on, says creepy stuff, turn lights off, and get it to sit in the dark.
And then stays sitting in the dark. Yeah, weird.
It is passive aggressive creepiness for sure.
Like, if she really wanted to kind of drive it home, she just like gets up and slams out. No, exactly. I'm gonna go back to sitting in the dark.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's super creepy.
It's super creepy, but also, like, she sends Randolph to follow Molly for the day, and there's a moment where you see him following them, and he's eating candy floss as he's watching on. And I don't know why. That's also just as creepy to me as the mother turning off the light after she says has her speech and has her moment. Yeah.
It's just like, how long was she waiting in the dark? She's just like, she's sitting there for like 2 hours in that thing with just her hand holding the chain, waiting.
She was there since it was light, Chris.
I loved it though. I did. It was
the creepy mother. Yeah. It's like that. It was like it was very Kathy Bates from Misery.
Yeah.
It was that kind of just creepy. But anyway, we do learn that the mother is somewhat crazy. Like, we know she's bad. We assumed that from her interactions with Michner and with Tiago. But this kind of equals the point. It's like mother equals bad, Molly equals good? Question mark?
Maybe.
Because she potentially was having an affair with the husband of the dead family. And I think that was the interesting bit to see at the end, where we do get Tiago and Molly spending this day together, growing that relationship to try and escape their lives and just spend a moment and seeing this blossoming potential relationship that's, okay, again, it's blossoming over the course of like 2 days that we've seen like an hour in story. But it was good, and it was nice, and like you do see them forget the things that they're working on and kind of just become that bubble and stay in that sunset, which, oh my god, that sunset. Yes.
Magnificent.
But then
Yeah.
the breaking of that very quickly, because we see Tiago, after being told by Mitcher that Molly was potentially having an affair, was shacking up with this guy because he has a house somewhere, go sort it out. And you see Tiago just in his room with a single tear rolling down as he has gone through this, and it looks probably like she is having an affair, and staring at the Popeye.
Yeah.
And the question I have is, do you think they're going to go down that she was having an affair with him and the mother killed him because she needs to be virtuous, and that Molly has no idea because she just assumed it was all bad luck, and every boyfriend she's ever had has died mysteriously, and she just assumes it's the way of God, or they've gone to a farm upstate like all puppies?
Yeah.
Or do you think that there is no affair, it's just whatever?
I'll take option 3, Chris. Yeah, I think Molly knows that her mother's the one that killed Hazlitt.
Yeah.
Because I think that recitation of the Popeye theme tune is there to go, I don't care what you do, you can't get out of my sight, I'm in full control of you. And Molly knows that. Because there's also that moment during the montage where Molly's singing Let's Face the Music and Dance. I think that's almost exactly at the moment that Tiago finds out that she's having the affair, because he's reading those files. But there's the moment where her mother, she's in the room crying on the floor, and her mother is at the door either praying or singing at her. Something that's clearly getting under Molly's skin, or clearly scaring Molly as well. So I think my version of what's happening with them, and I'm sure we're going to see more of this as the episodes go on, but my version of what's happening between Molly and her mother is her mother's in full control, and Molly feels like she should be able to get out of that. She hasn't been able to be successful in the past, and she thought this day with Tiago was the day that she was able to get out of it, but no, her mother's there the whole time watching on, or at least sending Randolph to watch on. So close to your version of what you think happened as well, Chris. But I just think that there's that extra thing that she finally thinks that even after the Hazlitt murder, she's able to get out, but she can't do that either. So I wonder if the relationship with Hazlitt might have been what she thought was going to be her previous way out of her mother's control. Maybe Hazlitt was going to take her away from it all, kind of thing.
It could be that. It could be the abusive mother, ultimately, that kind of idea. You know, like, I'm thinking of with the recent movie about Tonya Harding, this idea of a mother that is, you know, psychologically, rather than necessarily physically abusive. And because whatever her mother is doing at the end, whether it's shouting at her, praying at her loudly, or singing at her, Molly's not particularly reacting to it well by any stretch of the imagination. I think certainly, there's shade on Molly around the Haslitts. And I think certainly it's at least because, well, she did know him. She didn't just have that one meal round at the Haslitts' house that time. Absolutely. But and I think, is that why Tiago is having that sort of emotional moment in his own apartment, because, you know, he does say to Michner, I still believe that she is good. I don't think for her to still be good, again, I think one of the great things about the original Penny Dreadful is it had a lot of grey, a lot of shade. So I think there is shade on Molly, absolutely, for sure. And who could blame her trying to get out of the control of her mother by going in with Hazlitt, even though necessarily it could be viewed as a bad thing, given that he was married with 2 kids. But then, you know, how is Tiago taking this up? So I hope he still believes, because the whole thing on the Santa Monica Pier it just felt really nice. I think you knew it wasn't going to last. Although I found it weird that Tiago did say, you're the second best thing that has happened to me. I would have slapped him if
What's number one? Molly. What's number one?
You mean? And I think the first time we watched this through, we hadn't really caught the importance of something that he talks about, and one of his childhood memories of being brought down to the pier by his dad and his mum, and sort of
And the whole family was there.
Yeah.
And they'd saved up enough money to only be able to get down there and not go any of the rides, but that was the best day of his life. And this is the second best day of his life that he's spending with her. So it was actually quite nice the second time we watched it. The first time was like, what was your first good day? Was it when you graduated in the police force, or what was it? Because that would be the instant question I'd have. But just because we missed the dialogue first time, that was
I
all.
just would have slapped him. I'm just like,
tipped him over the edge of the pier.
how dare you go swim? No, I think potentially what they may be doing is setting up that Hazlitt was going to get them, was going to free her, was going to like spirit her away, because she does mention in was it the second episode when we meet her and Tiago's kind of interviewing her. Hazlitt was a good man. He was a very, very good man. And from that I'm starting to think that potentially, he got her an apartment off books to hide her from the mother, maybe, and that's where. And then we'll find out that the mother's bodyguard, the evil bald man, because only bald men are evil, apparently.
Randolph, yes. Randolph looks like he should be in the remake of the Addams Family.
Absolutely.
But okay, so look, I just think I'm interested to see where this storyline is going.
So you think they haven't had an affair? Hazlitt just did this to protect Molly, bought the place for her to get her out of
potentially.
Out of her
I think that could be where it's
potentially.
going.
Okay, yeah.
Because I do think, I agree, because I think the world weariness, the cynicism, ultimately, of Michner is what's leading him down the road of saying, she's not the girl that you thought she was. Because I know it was her. She was for him, she was disrupting the family of the Haslitts rather than necessarily thinking that Hazlitt was trying to do it to protect Molly.
Very good, very good. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. Look at me looking at the same clues that both detectives looked at and coming to the same conclusion, and the conclusion may be wrong.
So, gentlemen, that wraps up my point. I think it's time to move into Notas della Muertos, the Notes of the Dead. I want to bring one up very quickly. I'm going to jump right in. Based on the name alone, we ended our last episode discussing the future of a particular brother. And what would it mean? And what about the mother's heart? And none of that got answered because he was alive and well, kicking in bed, having a nice moment with his other brother, and then both brothers. I say what now?
Well, he doesn't remember what happened, so that potentially might come back in future. So that may return to him in future. But yeah, he didn't die, which is one thing that we weren't clear about last time. That we should have probably said. He was on his deathbed, and they were told the machine was going to have to be turned off. But he was cured, back out of the bed by the end of the last episode. This time, he's back in his bed resting. So either it's something they're going to keep for later, which I really hope they go back and explore. The possibility that she's made a deal with a devil to get her son back. I hope that's going to be seen in a later episode, because we really didn't get much of Raoul here, other than he has respect for Tiago. And there is that moment where Tiago asks him, is he okay? He just takes his hand and looks in his eyes and kind of says to him, it seems like he's saying to him, I understand what you did, because of the explanation that Mateo gave him, that he was shooting all around him, and Tiago shot him. So there's not much in the dialogue, but to me it looked like he was saying, I understand why you shot me. So that might have just put to bed the tension between the two of them.
I thought it was just, look, I have no heartbeat.
I had exactly the same thing as well. I was like, because he says, how are you doing? And then there's no words spoken. It's literally, I've not got a heartbeat. Definitely. And I think that would be awesome from the supernatural side of it. And given the idea of zombies in that Central American culture, things like the Day of the Dead coming back to life and all that with, that idea to me would, I think, be absolutely awesome. And I suppose it is early days for Raul. So maybe, I would like to see him kind of go all supernatural here, that for sure. I think that would be a great way of introducing the supernatural into the show, other than just Magda and Santa Muerta. That maybe he has something like his mama, and he can channel this because of her spirituality that's almost been passed generationally down.
Maybe.
And it's skipped one with Tiago, I suppose. But like,
no, it's the same generation.
The idea of having a zombie brother would be great. And the bloodshot eye makeup was awesome. Yeah. I did think he looked really good as someone who's just come out of intensive care.
It was really good, though, was that the eye makeup that was on Adam Rodriguez, who plays Raul. There was a bit of joking back and forth on Twitter between the two brothers, between Adam Rodriguez and Johnathan Nives, who plays Mateo, where he hadn't seen him since they'd filmed the scene at the end of the first episode. And Adam Rodriguez was saying that he walked into the crane that was controlling the camera and was taken off effectively with a bruised eye. And the next time that the kid saw him, that Johnathan Nives saw him, he was all bandaged up with this beautiful prosthetic in his eye, or the contact lens in his eye showing the bloody eye, and he thought that was the damage from the camera. Well, that was very funny, but there you go.
I just do
bro.
really hope that they explore this further at least in the next episode of the thing, because basically we didn't see Mama, and her heart should have been jumping out of her chest. It just unless they're going to turn Zombie Bro into a really cool spin-off, like 80s. Like, it's like, zombie bro.
I think the structure of this so far has been kind of every other one where they pick things back up.
Yeah.
It dare I say it's almost like a dance, where there's a different rhythm.
Almost interpretive, if you will.
No.
Like a High School Musical?
No, nothing like High School Musical. But I think that seems how it's playing. So I'm hoping we get to see Mama and Raul a bit more next episode for sure. Yeah. I think it's because you want to get that juiciness and to see it. And I think you have the episode where they don't address it, but you get the juicy dance at the Crimson Cats. And then, it may be another few. So I think it's just how the story's being woven through at the moment. So, but we'll see. You never know. I could all be wrong by the next episode, of course.
Yeah, we only saw Maria Vega for a quick moment in this episode where she mentions about the party that she's going to be working for the Crafts, which is the one point that we didn't mention in this episode. Dr. Craft going to visit Elsa in her home. That's another interesting scene between the two. Again, it's this idea that we know that Elsa isn't a real person, and there is no such thing as her husband, Mr. Branson. He doesn't exist. So these things that she's creating, these stories that she's creating to bring in Dr. Craft and try and get him convinced of the things he needs to do, which is effectively she's saying that her son Frank is being bullied by Jews in the local school. Therefore, she needs to be introduced to Dr. Craft's other German Nazi friends. So she's getting her way by convincing him that this is what he needs to do. But we get a kiss between the two of them, or at least Dr. Craft kisses her and she pushes him away, saying, not in Mr. Branson's house. So an interesting moment between the two of them there. That's obviously going to play out over the next couple of episodes between those two characters. There's definitely a vampire line from her where she does send him on his way and then says to Dr. Craft, we would very much want to come into your home on Sunday if we're invited, basically, which is kind of like, that really struck me as a vampire-y thing to say. Now that we're invited to your home, I can go to your home now, kind of thing. You go to public places, but you can't go to other places unless you're invited, maybe.
Yeah, that stuck out to me like a sore thumb. And I was like, oh. But I also did want to say, yeah, it's you thought you were going to get no German accent this whole episode. But no, right at the end, right at the notes of the dead, I practiced my accent and it comes right in there. Oh, yeah. This just felt like it's just moving that story along, which is fine. I didn't fully understand the connection on this one. She wants to be introduced to the other Nazi friends. But I'm like, she knows the Nazis because of the councilman. Or are we gonna get a scene where it's Mrs. Craft plus Alex plus her son, and like they're like it's gonna be three elements of them all talking together because it's just gonna be a room full of other Germans and Nazis. And I'm like, I want to know what the end game on this Dr. Craft storyline or where that's going, because that's the disconnect I can't see at the moment.
So I don't think Dr. Craft has any connection at all to Goss and Kurt. I think Dr. Craft is a fascist who believes in Nazism, but I don't think he has any connection to the Third Reich. I don't think he's that connected. I think he believes it's a political party that's making a political statement from the home country into America. You know what I mean? I don't think he's directly connected to those Germans. I think he's connected to other people who felt disenfranchised as immigrants coming to America, and they've set up this group. Because remember, his speech in the park was quite polite. It was a fun speech about how we should all protect ourselves and put America first. It wasn't about joining up with the Germans and going to war against the Europeans. It was about sticking to ourselves and living by good morals and not getting involved in fights outside of America.
It's another form of I suppose race relations and also racism, in that as an immigrant they want, they have come together to live, and that's what he's doing. And he is also being prompted by the Nazis because that's what they also did. They played on people's fears. And so we're saying he's part of this American-German bunt. So it's a different kind of form. I don't think he's at the level where he's connecting in with her Goss and the Gestapo. But that's not to say that they wouldn't be actively promoting it. You know, we hear from Goss talking about they'll fund through these charities to Councilman Townsend. He's just another face of it. Yeah. And in a sense, he is a brought up member of the Nazi party if he's waving his swastika around. It's just maybe he's taking different elements of there, or maybe he's a bought in member. But I would think if he knew Alex then, and through the councilman, he would realize that Eliza was someone different. So Alex, I don't think really would be involved in the German part of it at all. Yeah. But I think that if somehow she was involved and she knew Dr. Craft, then Elsa would be like, he would have pointed that out.
Yeah.
Okay.
That you look like a friend. Yeah. Or I would hope so. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, like remember, they're very surreptitious meetings between the two members, between Goss and Councilman Townsend. Nobody's supposed to know about those. They're happening behind closed doors, kind of thing. So I don't think they're going over to a kid's 10th birthday party on Sunday to meet up with Elsa.
Yeah.
Well, we'll wait and see.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I spotted the bus service that came to the stop where Molly and Tiago reconnected was Townsend Transportation Incorporated. So I just wondered whether the councilman had some kind of sideline, given that he's also head of the transport committee. So it's nice to see that nepotism still goes back that far in the US.
So it went back to the 1400s in the church.
Well, exactly.
So it's been around for a long time, and obviously in royal circles, going back for millennia, probably.
Nepotism all over the place.
One final note to close out the notes section. That was definitely a reference that Fly Rico made to RuPaul's Drag Race, wasn't it? Just before Mateo goes out on the floor, he goes, "Mateo, don't fuck it up, baby." That's definitely a reference to RuPaul saying that just before they do their big dance sequence at the end of Drag Race. I'm sure of it.
Definitely.
I don't know. Maybe. I know Dead Drop. I know that's a thing, isn't it? The death drop? Dead drop?
Death drop. Yes, there is a death drop.
Okay, that's
thought it
all
was
I
a
know.
slut
That's
drop.
terrible.
There is a slut drop. Yes.
Oh.
There's lots
many
of drops.
what we're trying to talk about. So, gentlemen, I think that's about time and all of our notes and points. So I think it's about time we wrap this schnizzle up. Or schnitzel, if you will.
That's much better than schnizzle,
Yeah.
definitely.
Because John always comes out with a witty scoring system at the end. John, what did you think about this episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels, episode 3, Wicked Old World?
Yeah, again, I really like this. I'm liking the build up. There's a lot of, dare I say it, with a freeway about to start, construction. There's a lot of ground to be prepared, I think, for this, series. So I am liking this. I'm really glad that Mateo has, seeing his, maybe his birth into, experiencing, a journey in life, and who he is to become, a lot of self-learning by going to, the bar for a bit of a shindig. I kind of, it felt familiar to, going off and doing a rave for the first time. Not that I then went off and decided to bring down society or anything,
No.
far from it, but nonetheless, I really liked it. I give this 4 Crimson Cats out of 5. For sure. I thought it was good. I loved Nathan Lane. I absolutely loved his slinking around. I think he's doing a great job in that role. I think Tiago and Molly, it was great to have them, sort of brought together and presumably torn apart maybe by this revelation, at least as his partner Lewis Michner has put it to him. Hopefully we get to find that the truth is more about Hazlitt trying to protect her, like you were saying as well, Chris. I thought her Goss, I loved his confrontation with Townsend. And Townsend, he's beautifully despicable in many respects, like him on that jiggler machine, sort of the belt, sort of trying to melt away his fat, and his confrontation with Councilwoman Beck. I mean, he's kind of awful, and then you kind of get the realization that he's also hiding a lot. Again, he's quite a complex character. He's, he projects strength, but is being controlled a lot by the Nazis with her Goss, by Alex in terms of her advice, and in a sense by society by saying that you can't have sex with men. So it's really, he's kind of, I'm like, Townsend, you've kind of, I don't want to say I want to root for him, but I'm just like, you could be so much better.
He's just an a-hole who's in a position of power again, that's all.
Yeah, exactly. He's really bad. And then I think, with the Crimson Cat, I also quite liked High School Musical, to be honest. So I was definitely a buy-in for the Crimson Cat. And I was great to see.
Please don't leave us with the comparison that we think that amazing 104-person dance sequence that happened in this episode is anything like High School Musical, a Disney TV show for kids or movie for kids. It's nothing like that. It was an amazing dance sequence.
It was
not connected at all.
I'm totally
to a
with
Disney
you.
dance sequence.
I'm totally with you. But at the same time, I loved Rio, a great kind of character, and I like that you sort of drew out slightly different from Alex and Elsa, who are maybe a little more subtle, and I like she's certainly a fighter, and maybe she has to be. It's kind of the company she's in. She's in the spirited Pachucos, so she has to convey that. So I think Natalie Dormer is doing a wonderful role here as well, along with pretty much all the cast. I thought Mateo was great in this, and Tiago. It's good to see him coming a bit to the fore. I think sometimes maybe we've not covered him as well as possibly we have, sort of could have done in some of the episodes, but I really enjoyed his stuff.
He's our
on
driver
Santa.
character.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the one that bridges a lot of stories, but he doesn't have a huge amount of screen time.
Exactly.
Where it's just about him.
It's like Ethan Chandler in season 1, in a sense, of Penny Dreadful. So yeah, absolutely defend this. It is 4 Crimson Cats out of 5. Roar.
Meow. Derek. Or rare. Derek, what did you think of this episode?
I'm coming to the conclusion with Penny Dreadful City of Angels, you have to watch the episodes twice, or at least I do. Because I watched the first time and I thought the scenes between Tiago and Molly dragged until it came to the point at the end of the episode where the whole setup of him winning the Popeye toy for Molly brought about one of the creepiest moments in the episode towards the end, one of the creepiest moments in the season so far. So definitely the second time watching this episode through was much better than the first. And I actually watched it a third time today just before recording as well. So, I'm really enjoying these episodes. There's so much that I really loved about this one. I think this may be my favorite so far. Because I enjoyed the introduction to the Pachucos, which were so well built up by Fly Rico in episode 2, seeing them on screen and seeing this whole underground society going on that is bringing in Mateo, who seems to be from quite a poor background, now seeing this colourful, amazing, multiculturally diverse segment of society that are kind of hidden behind a curtain in this bar in the Crimson Cat. I think it's just really cool and really vibrant, and I'm really excited for that side of the story to kick off, and loads of other cool stuff. You know, as I say, Rio was fantastic. This new character from Natalie Dormer, loved her in this, and really liked the other characters that she's playing. And they all felt so distinct that I really keep having to pull myself back and go, they're all Magda. She's just in every scene with all of these other characters because they're all so different. All 3 of these versions of the character are so different. So lots of exciting stuff, I think, in this episode, and I'm really intrigued about the storyline for the season so far. Chris, what did you think of this episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels?
Hold on, let me just do it through interpretive dance and you may understand what I wanted to say. No. Jokes aside, I actually did enjoy this, but not, for me, it's a hard 3.5, and it could easily go to a 4 or 4.5 on a lot of parts, but it just misses that final push over the end. So, for the Werner von Braun, if they just had have explained the significance a tiny bit more, let me talk to you about, like, rockets, blah, 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 or the dance number. 1 was fine. Rather than have 2 of them, just had 1 where Rio comes in midway through, and it rather than 2, it's 1.5. It's either extended too long or not extended enough.
Right.
It's just missing that final, like, it's a solid B. I want you to be an A or an A+, and you just, every now and again, you're making little things, and I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. Like, it's just those little things. I'm like, come on. Really, for me, it was just a small little bit. So I'm enjoying this season. I'm enjoying the threads, and I'm wondering if it's the editing or I'm wondering if I rewatch this as a whole later, all 10 episodes, I'll understand where they're trying to go with some of these things, or no, okay, it doesn't matter that they haven't talked about Zombie Bro because he's going to get his own episode in episode 4, and they're going to really explain what it's like of having Zombie Bro versus the Santa Muerte's touched brother. Right. And then it's those, you know, those little things. It's just, they've set up a lot. I hope, you know, it's just like you're building to this. And if it pays off, it's going to be Watchmen level. Like, it's going to be really good. And I'm going to go, you know what? That would have been as good as the Ozymandias reveal in Watchmen. And I'm like, that paid off so well. Well done. I really appreciate it. I'm 3 episodes in. I want to see where they go with 4. I get the feeling that some of it may not, or some of it may just end up being dropped lines and dropped scenes, and I don't think that's right.
Okay, but I'll give you a little bit of help. John Logan, after doing the first 3 seasons of the show, this is his new show. He's pretty all over it in terms of what he's setting up, at least in those shows, as to where it could end towards the end of the series. So this isn't new to him. He's not new to TV. So I would say a lot of the real questions that you may have will be answered by the end of the season. I don't think he'll drop anything, as he didn't really in the past. Some things, of course, as we've said before, were set up in episode 1 of season 1 of Penny Dreadful and didn't get revealed until the final episode of season 3 of Penny Dreadful. But they were all in the plan. So I wouldn't say things aren't going to pay off, but I would definitely say Penny Dreadful Series 1, Series 2 and Series 3 were better when you watched them the whole way through the second time after you knew everything that was going on, because we're still introducing people and still introducing characters. So hopefully that'll be the same.
So let's wait and see. But that was our thoughts of this episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. I think it's about time we move into some feedback in our section that we like to call Penny for Your Thoughts.
Nice. Just want to start this section just saying thank you to Azazel1970 from over in Australia, who left us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts saying, great review, keep working on the accents. I presume that should have ended with Chris.
Yeah! Sehr gut. Yeah, sehr gut. Thank you so much,
No, keep working on the accents, not using them, Chris. Okay. No, thanks very much, Azazel, and thanks to everybody else who reviews us over on Apple Podcasts. Really nice to see some reviews of our overall episodes as well. We also got another email in from Jim Picanesco in Pasadena, California. Chris, you want to take this one?
Jim had this to say this week's Nuggets. Here's a little info from episode 2. They actually were on location in Pasadena. The establishing shot of where Sister Molly performs is the Pasadena Civic Auditorium. The exterior scenes on the steps are there, and I think even the interior shots were filmed there. The auditorium is most famous for, of course, this is from Wikipedia, but thank you for sending this across, Jim. We appreciate it. Michael Jackson's first performed the moonwalk in public on March 25th, 1983, in front of a live audience at, you guessed it, the Pasadena Civic Auditorium for the taping of a television special, Motown 25, Yesterday, Today, and Forever.
Fantastic.
Excellent stuff.
Jim went on to say, I was a junior in high school. It was a really big deal. Later in life, I attended a distinguished speaker series there, and one of the speakers was, drumroll please, the Iron Lady herself, and I'm not talking about Natalie Dormer, Margaret Thatcher. Yes.
Sorry.
Yes, he also says he might be reaching for a connection, but don't worry, Jim. We got you. Thank you so much for writing in. We appreciate this. Like I said, these little tidbits are great. And bringing it back to old Maggie T always brings a smile to John's face.
Yes, it does. Through grimace teeth, through clenched teeth, should I say, and a grimace. No, thanks so much, Jim. That's really interesting about the moonwalk with Michael Jackson, because it is a beautiful.
Hello, Derek, Chris, and John. Hopefully, all three of you are on this.
And even
this
Thatcher.
I really loved. This is Steve, and I really loved this episode of Penny Dreadful. There was a lot of really cool stuff. I watched it once, so I'm going to try to watch it again before I actually send this to you guys. I wanted to get a couple of initial thoughts out before I watch it for a second time. Even though I knew it was probably going to happen, I loved seeing the switch from, is it Alex to Magda there on the street as she's walking away from the councilman. I was like, oh, we're going to see her change. She's going to change. She's going to change. And then she did. And then the windows are exploding. It was really, really cool. Even though it was just a cool transition there. And then meeting the Rio character was wow. Just in that whole dance sequence, was just impressive to me. And Natalie Dormer is just really killing it in this season, in this series. So she's just amazing. She was already great before, but now she's been raised up to another notch. Seeing the fact that the councilman has some homosexual proclivities, is that the right proclivities? Yeah. Is not necessarily surprising, but definitely shows what she was talking about when she told the Germans, I'm going to have to deal with some stuff. Really, really great. I can't wait to watch it again. I may try to add to this before I send it, again, like I said, but, I still think Molly is a pure good character. I don't think she's evil, even though we're kind of getting hints at that now. Okay. I'll add to this later. One last quick thing before I send this off. Nathan Lane, I thought, was really, really great in this episode. I don't know if I've seen him do like a dramatic type role or that type of a role before, and like a tough guy kind of scene that he had. So, all right, talk to you later.
Thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, I think John mentioned earlier on, I know Nathan Lane's done a lot of stage stuff where he's done some serious roles, but I don't think I'd ever seen anything of it until I saw him doing interviews for this show, basically, where a couple of those things were shown on screen. So it's really good getting that take, I suppose, at this stage in his life. He's been around for a very long time on screen, so it's great that he's been able to channel it into this role. It's been really, really good.
Yeah, thanks so much, Steve. Yeah, I'm with you. I think Nathan Lane is just really good, and I like his and Tiago's dynamic. It's really kind of great. I think Natalie Dormer, yeah, she is absolutely hitting this out of the park for sure. I'm really enjoying seeing her as Alex, as Elsa, and now as Rio, as well as being Magda. I really want to see Magda maybe have to sort of put herself out there and take out a few people. And dare I say it, I actually think it might be Dr. Craft's son, Tom, the one with the specs. I think that isn't going to work out well when he invites her and her son into the party.
Oh, because of the suspicion on the beach.
Yeah, for the birthday party. And dare I say it, the guys that Councilman Townsend was servicing, then certainly I think, yes, they could come to a really sticky end and just blow everything wide open.
Yeah, they could.
Sorry, and also just while we're at some kind of slightly off topic, and Steve, thank you so much for your voicemail. As always, it's fantastic to hear from you each week. But anyone else just hear Duran throughout the whole of this episode? No? Her name is Rio and she dances in the sand. No?
Despite those lyrics that you've just spoken, Chris, I still haven't heard that song.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
There is literally a song by Duran called Rio, and it has been playing in my head throughout this song.
Those lyrics that you have literally just butchered.
Yes.
Yes.
I can do it in German. Her name is Rio, and she dances in the sand. No,
I have heard those lyrics, just not in that order or at that pitch.
Okay, right. Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you so much, Steve. I'm going to end my butchering of Duran and the German accent by saying thank you so much.
Yes.
Absolutely. I also want to give a big shout out to Panels to Pixels podcast. I was listening to it this week. The guys are covering The Witcher at the moment, which I know we covered in 2 very long episodes at the start of the year. The guys are going week to week on The Witcher at the moment. So I was listening back on one of their episodes and they gave us a huge shout out on there. Guys, you got to listen to it. It's really nice of them to do that. So go check out Panels to Pixels podcast with Mark Kirkman and Steve Brown if you want to hear some more about The Witcher and some of the other wonderful shows that they've covered as well.
Yeah, big thanks, Mark and Steve. That's really, really nice of you. And also to Steve for the feedback, and Jim and Azazel. Just thank you so much for the feedback. It's really good to get the penny for your thoughts on all things Penny Dreadful. It's really good to hear, and I'm really enjoying the nuggets of information from Pasadena. I think that's really good stuff. Because I had no idea it would be the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, and just thanks, Jim. Yeah.
Yes, if you want to hear your dulcet tones on our podcast, you can record a clip of yourself on your phone and email it to us, or you can go over to our website at tvpodcastindustries.com and record up to 90 seconds of your thoughts on that week's episode and send it across. We record every Monday, so obviously watch it on a Sunday, on a Monday morning. Get it across to us as soon as you can. We'd love to hear from everyone. You can also go over to facebook.com/group/tvpodcastindustries, where we have a spoiler post each and every week where you can leave your thoughts. Make sure it's just in the spoiler post so you don't spoil it for anyone else who didn't get a chance. That's the main thing we ask.
One thing I have noticed actually is that the episodes are being released on Showtime's website, show.com, around 9 a.m. LA time. every Sunday before it airs on the channel. So if you do want to catch it early, make sure you go over to their website and you can catch the episode before it airs on the main channel.
Yes, so keep that in mind. If you cannot do the 10 p.m. Pacific time showing, make sure you just check it out that morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We hope you stay subscribed to our podcast, and if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends, because sharing the podcast is sharing the love. But you can also head over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industry and throw us an old penny, $1, anything you got, because it helps keeps the servers running, the mics on. There's no lights on if you're watching. There's no video that you can't. It's an audio podcast. But if you can see, I don't have the lights on. Not because I don't have electricity, but just because it's still daytime outside. But anyway, from one rambling to another, let's move it on to a pub quiz. Of course, a dreadful pub quiz. But no, not the one you're thinking of. The one and only Penny Dreadful pub quiz. John.
Thank you, Chris. Yes, this is actually the opposite of a rambling because it is a question.
That's true, actually.
Yes, welcome to the Penny Dreadful pub quiz, fellow dreaders. Grab a gimlet, which is 2 parts gin, 1 part lime cordial, and head to the Crimson Cat for this week's pub quiz, where you will be in with a chance to receive some Penny Dreadful City of Angels goodies, and maybe even some original Penny Dreadful goodies as well.
Yeah.
So we'll see what we can find for sure. Please send in your answers to all the questions that we do for this series of City of Angels to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And as I say, there will be hopefully some form of Penny Dreadful goodies. So this week's question for episode 3, Wicked Old World. What investigation gave Captain Vanderhoff sleepless nights when he was detective with the LAPD? I shall repeat that. What investigation gave Captain Vanderhoff sleepless nights when he was a detective with the LAPD? And dare I say it, I might just add in a bonus point, because it is the case that he gives in the show. But can you name the real life case from Los Angeles as well, in that same period that is roughly 1927, 1928.
Yes. Different name from what happened in real life, but yes, that was a really interesting one. I've actually got loads of stuff written down about that, but we're not going to talk about it.
No, so quick recap of the question. What investigation gave Captain Vanderhoff sleepless nights when he was a detective with the LAPD? And if you can name the real life inspiration for the case in the show, you'll get an extra point as well.
Very good, very good. Thanks so much for joining us. Thanks for the question, John, as well. Thanks everybody for joining us for this episode of Penny Dreadful City of Angels. We'll be back next week with episode 4, Josephina and the Holy Spirit, which is out on May 17th, 2020. Chris, once again, very happy anniversary to you and Kelly.
Thank you very much. Do you think Josephine is like Swiss cheese? Is it like a Swiss cheese spirit? Holy?
No.
Okay.
Oh wow, that's a joke from my childhood.
Thank you.
I think I'm now off to go and shoot myself in the head like Raoul.
Just to get that bad joke out of your mind.
Excellent. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll talk to you again next time.
Bye.
Thank you so much, fellow dreaders, for joining us. It's great speaking with you. Yes, out, damn spot for that bad joke there at the end from Chris. But remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep praying.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.